person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
What's up, rebels, cosmic souls? How y'all really feeling out there? Good. I hope so. It has been a long time coming, a lot of shifts and transformation. And today I'm trying something new. So work with me. This is something new I'm trying out to create more engagement and create more community. Based on like my mission of pioneering the world's first neurodivergent focused social media production company that will be dedicated to amplifying the superpower of being neurodivergent, which is creative geniusness, and providing economic and exposure opportunities for neurodivergent Black women while providing them with the tools and resources they need to live a comfortable and successful life. And yes, in that order, and let's get right into it. So overall, this workshop is focusing on amplifying neurodivergent Black women voices. And I will be taking you down like a journey with first playing the Malcolm X video where he highlight that the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. And just to think about why he probably said this and what have like the changes from when he said that probably in the 60s up until now in 2024. I don't know how many years. So that's about 60 years from when he first said that. And the next video I'm going to play is Taraji P. Henson acceptance speech, where she highlighted what went on when she spoke out during the Color Purple press tour about the injustice, and to really dive deep and to really think about the different stories of how non-disabled and neurotypical Black women have to navigate Hollywood with the pay disparities and all the injustice they experience, which doesn't even account for the challenges neurodivergent Black women have to endure to even attempt to even be a part of Hollywood. And next, I'm going to play a video where like a medical professional talk about how trauma impacts like the brain, and just thinking about how Black women plight here in America, and going back to my knowledge into like my analogy, where like I believe that Black women pain is like a supernova who's on its last light, waiting to be dispersed into Black space. And in doing that, I want to dive into the situation regarding Wendy Williams. And lastly, I will play a video of Taraji P. Henson, and what she like through all this, she's saying like how I just gotta be me. And like how many times, like I know for me on my personal journey of being like a 19-year plus traumatic brain injury survivor, like even 19 years later, I'm still working to discover myself, to really find my place in this inaccessible society. Because like when I got hit by a car, that was in 2004. And before I got hit by a car, no social media existed. I was living life to its fullest, going outside, enjoying life. And then something life changing happened that changed how I show up in society, and that transition of waking up from a 2-month coma, having to use like a wheelchair to walking on my own, and the vast difference of receiving the tools and resources that I needed, and how that became non-existent once I became able-bodied presenting. So yeah, so let's get right into it. And yeah.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
So again, when Malcolm X probably said those words, it was probably in the 1950s or the 1960s. And we have to think about that was only about almost 100 years after Black people was free from slavery. And we just think about, like, during that time, the plight of women during that time, Black people, if like just like your existence in America during the 1950s and 60s, if you wasn't a white male, and how this society was very inaccessible and non-inclusive, and you probably often felt misunderstood, unheard, and unseen. And like a lot of times when we talking about like the plight about like the feminist movement or even the civil rights movement, and a lot of time Black women voices often get silenced or overshadowed in those conversations, where we are probably only used to help push the movement, and while we are being pushed aside. And so, like, as we thinking about like women rights during that time, probably was non-existent. um and how Black women often during those times had to take a back seat because of their plight in society, of how they were seen and shown up. And then we think about up to the 90s and up to now, and how there's conversation saying Black women are too masculine. We need to be more submissive and feminine. Where, like, I feel now we are in a time where Black women are finally taking off the super cape, and we are finally creating space for us to have a voice and to heal through all the trauma that we have experienced since Black people was first brought to America in 1619 up to now. And just like there's so much work that needs to be done, but that means there is opportunity to help co-create a more inclusive and accessible society for all. And so the next video that I want to play is Taraji P. Henson, her like acceptance speech. I don't know what award show this was at, but yeah. Okay, it's coming up. Okay.
Thank you guys so much for showing up for me all the time. Not just to the box office or watching what I'm in, but y'all saw what happened and y'all showed up. You showed out. You showed me love. It's a scary thing to speak your truth, but I urge you all to speak your truth, because at the end of the day, that's all we have. And like they say, the truth will set you free. And not only that, it will set somebody else free. So I just thank you. I love you. Thank you, NAACP, for always seeing me, making me feel seen. Thank you to every woman, person in this struggle together. And thank you to my entire cast, crew, Warner Brothers, Oprah Winfrey. Thank you. Thank you.
So, like, I feel like we have heard like numerous accounts of non-disabled and neurotypical Black women constantly speaking out about the injustice and the hardships that they have to navigate while being in Hollywood, from Viola Davis, Taraji P. Henson, Tracy Ellis Ross. Then we have Monique, who actually took like a firm stance and actually did something about it with her battle against like Netflix. And it's like a lot of, I feel like when Monique was taking a stance and she asked us to boycott Netflix with her. And then a lot of people say like, I'm not doing it just for just to help her get the money that she needs, or to like, because like I'm rambling. So I guess what like I was trying to say is that like I heard like a lot of like conversations of reasons why some people felt that they wasn't going to boycott Netflix, because like just being like a Black person in America that's average, that's living in the hoods, and you just making ends meet and barely getting the necessities in life. So it's hard to see beyond that struggle or that position in life. And when someone like Monique, who others may perceive that's doing better, that have money, that don't have nothing to complain about, and saying like, why should I help you when you have more than I do? And I understand that positioning. But when we really, and I think sometimes like as like Black people in America, we have just become accustomed of receiving just the bare minimum, just receiving scraps, or just making do with what we have. And when a lot of times when we see someone that's willing to take a stand, that say like, no, I deserve more, and sometimes there's going to be like a population that's going to go against, that's going to challenge that. And I feel like so many people got stuck on that position and not really listening to what Monique was saying, why she was suing Netflix, why she called for the boycott against them. Because like I heard her have like more like discussion about what was in that contract, and saying like, because it was more so the argument saying like, yeah, she was offered $500,000, but like she and then she was saying like she deserved the same amount or close to what Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock and Amy Schumer was offered, was $2 million. And like, and I've been having a lot of conversations with people about these issues. And some people say it's about market value. Can she sell out arenas? Like, what is she doing now to say that she's worth that? It's like people, especially when it comes to Black women, while we feel the need to constantly put our resume, like we do this, this is what we worth. And it's like, have we not think like know about Monique like resume? Like she is, if not one of the most decorated comedians. Like I think she won like an Oscar and some other awards. And other times when we judge, when I know when like with pay rate is it can be negotiated like different rates, like what you currently doing now, like how many movies you had that sold out in like the box office, or it can be your resume and like what you known for and your achievements. So it becomes a question, why, if Monique is one of the most decorated comedians of all time, why is her resume not eligible or a good requirement in saying that she deserved more than $500,000 from Netflix? And then that's, I feel like that's a good point that a lot of people mix over. And Monique also talked about in like different interviews that she talked about, like in that contract, why she decided to take a stand is that, yeah, they was offering her $500,000, but in that contract, the jokes that she say in that stand-up special, that she couldn't say those jokes anywhere else. And as I was hearing her talking, and then she said like that she had to think about, like, she can make that amount of money of doing like a set at a comedy club, so why would she take $500,000 from Netflix and she can't say those jokes anywhere else? And so, like, I think about a lot of times, I don't think when these situations are happening that we really dive deep of the circumstances and we weigh the different outcomes. Like, if, like, yes, Netflix is a huge platform, but is it worth me doing this if I'm not able and I have to take myself off the market, and I know my value is way more than what they offering me? And I think those are the conversations that we need to be having regarding when we say Black women are the most disrespected people in America and the most neglected. Like, there are a lot of different conversations, especially when we're talking about in the workplace. And we have someone like Dr. Bailey who took her own life because of the bullying that she was receiving in the workplace. And she took the necessary steps to get help and support, but everybody ignored her. And the only thing she felt that she can do to relieve her from the trauma and the stress that she was experiencing was to take her own life. And like, so, like, this is going back to my analogy where I feel like Black woman paint is like a supernova who is on its last light, ready to be dispersed into black space. And it's like a lot of times we often feel misunderstood, unheard, and unseen. And it's like a lot of times like we are looking for that community where we can receive that support and receive that grace, and where like we not always having to feel like we got to carry the world on the back of our shoulders, and we are constantly scrutinized or humiliated or criticized for every little things, but everybody else received grace. So, and now I want to go on and play a video where this medical professional is talking about how trauma affects the brain. So let me bring this video up. And let's play this. Come on, come up, video. Okay. Oh, okay, I gotta press. Okay, yeah.
How does trauma change our brain? When we look at brain scans, what do we see in a traumatized person?
Brain scan data is more complicated and harder to interpret. You can see different patterns in the brain. We're not at the point where brain scan science can pinpoint, right? But what we do see is parts of the brain that are sort of inflamed, so to speak, by trauma. So the amygdala and pathways around the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that gets called sometimes Grand Central Station for negative emotion, right? We see that pathways involving this part of the brain become more prominent, right? So we see changes in brain connectivity, right? Because how our brains function is by communicating from one place to another. They function through connectivity, and which pathways are more prominent. So what we see then is pathways that are involved in trust, say, and feeling a sense of safety are less prominent. Pathways that are more activated when we feel less safe and more vigilant are more activated. And then we see the climate, so to speak, in the brain change in a way that's less healthy. And you may also see specific aspects of a post-trauma syndrome. So mood regulation areas are not functioning as well because now there's depression intruding. So we see patterns in the brain that show us this change.
And I've heard you talk about how that creates cognitive blind spots, so blind spots in our brain following a traumatic event. What do you mean by cognitive blind spots, and what's the harm or risk of that?
Okay, well, I didn't get the full clip, but like I feel like a lot of times like people go to the gym to work out their physical body, but what are we doing to maintain our mental health and our wellness? And like what type of like brain exercise are there to like keep like our brain healthy? So like I know like for me, I'm a 19-year traumatic brain injury survivor, and like and I very much resonate to what this man was saying with like with having blockage, with having like blackouts, with having like fog, and it's sometimes feeling like my brain is like paralyzed, that paralyzed like my whole body. And a lot of time when we are talking about neurodivergency, we have to actually think about what it really means. Neurodivergency basically means our brain process information differently than a neurotypical person, or just think about like if a person was neurotypical but they experienced trauma and having to go through depression and grief, then they structure their brain, it changed. And that's why I feel it's like neurodivergency. So a lot of time when I started on this journey, I wanted people to see me like, yes, I'm a traumatic brain injury survivor. I have ADHD and other neurological disabilities, challenges. And one thing I had to learn, like a lot of times, like I wanted people to see me to receive the tools and resources that I needed, that a lot of time I get denied. But I had to learn that I had to stop putting myself in positions to be devalued and disrespected, and to take action, even though I know that I go over and above beyond. I overcompensate. I put extreme pressure on myself, and I just wanted grace. I just wanted like a easy life. But I had to learn like, even though like it's a fact that a lot of times the accessibility needs for neurodivergent individuals are not widely necessarily known as someone who may have a physical disability or someone who may be blind or deaf. So I had to learn of having to stop being like superhuman, and knowing that I deserve like a easy life. And I had to learn things like, okay, when like things are out of order and things don't go as planned, I really, it's hard for me to do things. So I had to learn like different tools to help get like oxygen and blood flowing back in my brain. So like what I do now when like I have like a brain fog, I like massage like my brain, and to make sure like my brain is getting that oxygen and getting the blood that is needed. Because sometimes like when like it feels like my brain is becoming paralyzed and my whole body is paralyzed, it's hard for me to breathe and it's hard for me to function. So like now I'm learning how to like communicate and socialize with people, because the frontal lobe of my brain was severely damaged. So my social skills and my organization skill was severely impacted in my car accident. So like I'm saying like, oh, I need to have a list, or I need to have this, or I need to like take a break or take a pause so I can be more effective in meetings or social interactions with people. And these are the things that like I'm learning ever since 2020. Ever since I learned like I put extreme pressure on myself, I overcompensate, and I took the time to unmask so I can learn how I show up and how I just become numb, and how I put myself in situations to be devalued and be disrespect. And since like I had that opportunity to unmask and to be aware of the skills that I need to learn and gain, I'm now taking the steps, and I'm now being able to say like I need to exercise every day. I need to go for like a 20-minute walk, and just eat more like alkaline food to help keep my brain function. Because like I refuse to take medication. My trust in Western medicine is non-existent. So I'm taking a more holistic approach. And because like I don't take the medication to help regulate me, it's an extra challenges. And these are the things that I need to do. And I want to play like this last video to just talk to Taraji, and talking about how like even through all this trauma, we still need to be true to who we are at the core, and take up space and be bold, and not let opinions, other people's thoughts and opinions and action against us to determine our worth or determine how we show up in life. And I think that is very important. Okay, so yeah. So hold on. It's going to play. Come on, video. Come on. Okay. Here we go.
When I walk in the room, I'm going to walk in as me, okay? Because I'm going to be me. So I'm not going to talk the way you want me to talk, because this is who I am. But if I have to speak that a certain way, if it's in the pages, that's what you're going to get. But I'm going to be me. I got to be me.
And yes, in that order, we just gotta be us. We just gotta be unapologetic and be bold and be willing to take up space. And now, before like I cut out, I want to talk about the Wendy Williams situation. As we seeing with the current documentary, we are currently seeing how Wendy Williams is currently being exploited by Hollywood media, which is a great example of how neurodivergent Black women pain is being silenced due to medical racism and exploitation within Hollywood media. Because let's be real, when it comes to medical racism, Black women are receiving late diagnosis or are undiagnosed. I met and I communicate with so many neurodivergent Black women, and they shared their story with me about how receiving a late diagnosis later in adulthood really impacted them. And a lot of time, especially with ADHD, because I also have ADHD, we don't think about how ADHD affects women in general. And when you really think about like the depression and suicidal thoughts, and like that goes on with like women, especially how like over throughout history, how our voice has been suppressed, and we often don't feel like we have autonomy over our bodies. And just thinking about having like that's how society view women in general, and just thinking about also having ADHD or other neurodivergent challenges and being like a Black woman already, and dealing with like depression, these suicidal thoughts, and you don't know what's wrong with you, and you're just trying to keep up with an inaccessible society that won't give you any type of grace, and what that really does to you. And once, like, as a Black woman, you receive that diagnosis, it takes so much pressure. Like, you start to think, oh, I'm not lazy, I'm not inadequate, something was wrong with me that really disrupted my executive function skills. Because in my research, I've been finding that like a lot of people that have ADHD, and it's just like a disorder of the executive function skills. And in my research and learning about my traumatic brain injury, where the frontal lobe of my brain was severely damaged, which impacted my social and organization skills. And I started thinking about thinking about like a lot of people who have ADHD and how they have blockage within within a frontal lobe. And I think that this is the primary reason why I am pioneering the world's first neurodivergent neurodivergent focused social media production company to amplify the superpower of being neurodivergent, which is creative geniusness, and to provide economic and exposure opportunities for neurodivergent Black women while providing them with the tools and resources to help them live a comfortable and successful life. Because as we've seen from the current situation with Wendy Williams and the situation with her guardianship, which they just changed from conservatorship after the Britney Spears situation to make it more digestible, to make it more cute, to make it more seem like, oh, it's sweet and we really want to help people. But when we dive deep into the current situation with the guardianship with Wendy Williams, where she is doing so much worse than when she was with her son. And it was Wells Fargo who filed a guardianship over her because they said something was funny was going on with her money. And the court actually took her out of the care of her son, and they threatened her son with jail time if he don't return her back to New York. And now currently Wendy Williams is I read a lot of like articles and seen videos that there are current pending lawsuits where with taxes, with her not paying her taxes, and other lawsuits. And we have to think about, she is under a guardianship, so why are these people suing her and not the people who are her guardians, who are probably taking money from her? And we really need to think about the origin of guardianship. And it goes way back to 1865, when disabled Black people wasn't able to leave a plantation as freely as a non-disabled counterparts due to mobility and cognitive challenges. And they had to stay on the plantations, or they was placed in human zoos or freak shows. And Antoinette Harrell is responsible for doing the research and writing a book on the history of the Black people who was still enslaved all the way up to 1963 in the Deep South. And I strongly believe that those people was descendants of the disabled Black people who couldn't leave the plantation in 1865. And then a lot of people don't know about the story of Blind Tom Wiggins. Now, Blind Tom Wiggins was a piano prodigy. He was also on the spectrum for autism. And he was the first Black person to perform at the White House, but he never reaped the benefits of his talents and gifts. But the white people who own him did, where we see like the guardianship or the conservatorship. It comes from how the existence of Black people in America, because the very institution of slavery crippled the Black American race, and the hidden history of how Black people, disabled Black people, was still enslaved after 1865, and how there's many stories like Blind Tom Wiggins, or if they was placed in freak shows or human zoos, or how the very autonomy of Black people in America is non-existent. And that's something when we thinking about like trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, which I think every Black person in America have, and how like we constantly like always arguing, we always do things just to be heard, is because so much has been done to us and so much trauma, and we haven't received the adequate tools and resources to help us deal with a lot of history that our ancestors dealt with. Like, I'm only the fourth generation removed from slavery. I'm only the second generation removed from Jim Crow, and I'm only one generation removed from the crack epidemic, and I'm currently experiencing modern Jim Crow. So that's a lot of trauma, and it's still present to this day. And so, and something that I'm doing to do something about it, because I will not be out there marching, screaming, and hollering. No, that's not me. I would not put myself in a position to be harmed, to be disrespected, and to be devalued. But what I am doing about it is pioneering the world's first neurodivergent focused social media production company. And I'm currently using the WAD Patreon channel as the beta stage. And you can go ahead and click that link and become a member and join me in this mission of co-creating a more inclusive and accessible society for all, while amplifying the superpower of being neurodivergent, while providing economic and exposure opportunities for neurodivergent Black women, while providing them with the tools and resources to help them live a more comfortable and successful life. And yes, and that's Orta, and that's all I have for you, rebels and cosmic souls. And I just want to remind y'all to be kind and gentle to yourself, because as a whole, as a collective of humanity, we have been through a lot with everything that's happened with the pandemic. Our reality has shifted, and we had to learn how to pivot. And it's been one trauma atrocity after another, and that's a lot. And it's time that we find our soul tribe and build community with like minds. And thank you for joining me and listening. I'm very appreciative. And again, remember to be kind and gentle to yourself, and peace out. And yes, and